Now, there is one word that is consistent in every single one of those definitions. And no, it's not the word something before you say it.
I was like, all right, what bullshit word can I pick out of here?
I knew you would be looking for one. She's going to be like, is it or? Hello, and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, please support us on Patreon.
And enjoy the show.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
How you doing?
Me or everyone?
Well, everyone can't answer me, unfortunately. So, I want to know how you're doing as well, everybody listening. But I think it probably makes a little more sense to ask that to the person who can actually respond. I could be wrong.
Makes sense. Since when do we make sense?
Logic. I scoff at your logic. How are you today?
Obviously a little silly.
There is nothing wrong with that. I'm always down for a bit of silly.
There is nothing different about that. Silly and weird. That's me.
Silly and weird. That's like, I wonder if that's going to end up being our nicknames, isn't it? Like silly and weird. Like silly and weird.
Or is it, silly and weird.
Interchangeable. We could go both ways. Who knows?
Let's Benifer it. Let's create a nickname, Weirdly or Willy. Oh, well, no, that's actually. All right. Well, let's discuss this off camera, right? And we're going to come back with a really, really, really cool name, or we're both going to forget this ever happened, and
probably the latter, if I'm being honest. But
if you really care, throw a comment in, and we'll make sure we'll
come back to it. So, how are you doing today? Oh my God. It's been really busy for us recently. We're currently helping out. We've got a local organisation, I know we've mentioned them beforehand, called Queer Keys, which is an LGBTQIA plus a non-profit down here in the Keys that we've both been helping to acquire donations for the silent auction for their coming out party, their fundraising event they've got. It's actually probably going to already have happened when this goes to this goes live. But it's been busy. We've been calling everybody.
It's been busy, but it's been so exciting.
It's so fun.
Yeah. And the organization itself is amazing. Right. And this specific fundraiser is for their youth program, which makes it even, for the kids.
And I don't know whether you even know this yet. Spoiler alert. But they're actually going to be announcing at the event their intention to create a fully resourced LGBTQIA plus community center down here in the Keys for all ages.
All ages.
So it's the youth program is where they're starting because they really need the support more than anything. But I'm so excited to see what they create down here.
Me too. I was aware of that, and it's been this little nugget of information. I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want to
let the cat out the bag.
I don't want it to.
Don't let Larry out the bag.
God, now I feel like I need to make a meme of him jumping out of the bag. Oh.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, are you saying you're welcome to me or to the viewers?
Yes, to everybody.
Yeah.
All the things. So today we are doing Larry, Queer Keys fundraising and all the weirdness aside. Today we're doing the second episode in our self-worth series. And I'm just really delighted that we're finally recording this because this has been in the works for quite a long time. And today we're going to be talking about the link between self-worth and self-care. Because this is something that is often, I think people don't realize the connection between the two and how closely linked they are. And I think a lot of that is because people don't really recognize or understand what self-care really is. So part of the reason for that is because it's been commodified and commercialized over the past 10 to 20 years specifically. It's before that as well, but
it's a real buzzword now.
And everybody's like, I'm a self-care. Like self-care.
And it's with that tone too. It's like self-care. It's like, self-care. No, self-care. Like
have a candle. Like,
self-care. Have a bubble bath. No, it's self-care. Drink a fucking glass of water.
Right? It always reminds me, there was a comedian, I can't remember which comedian who talks about going to like a spa and how they always have a picture of a pebble on the wall. I think it's Rod Gilbert. He's a Welsh comedian, talks about how you're meant to be going to, and it's all the lovely sounding voices. And there's a picture of a pebble on the wall. It's like,
or a dock leading into nothingness. Like,
oh yes.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all of these things. And
that dock is not self-care unless you are sitting on it.
And that feels like self-care to you. And this is the thing, like self-care is different for everybody. It's so easy for people to be, I think a lot of people come to us because they know that we help people with self-care and they expect us to go, right, your self-care formula is first do this, second do this, third do this, fourth. And that's not how it works. Like,
or just the definitives of it's this, and this, because it could be this, and this, or it could be a million other things.
And that, and that.
And what is this, and this for Claire is not this, and this for me, or it is on a Tuesday, but on Wednesday, none of that resonates. So we need to get ourselves out of these bubbles of absoluteness with it.
And also out of the conditioning of believing that self-care is something that takes money. Mm-hmm. Self-care is something you can buy. Now, are there things that you can buy that can help you with your self-care? Yes, but that's not it. I felt like you were about to say something.
Yeah, well, and also when you said that, it's something that has to cost money, but also the fact that, we're showing the link between self-care and self-worth is that a lot of times some of the times the things that you spend money on that feel like a splurge or a treat or a pamper are part of self-care. I'll get into it a little bit later, but I've had that experience with massages, changing it from a nice little pampering treat to that's actually part of my preventative wellness. Like that is like a medical thing that I do
to support
my body physically.
Right. Well, and interestingly enough, on the flip side of that, there's a bunch of stuff that we may buy or spend money on that has nothing to do with our self-care. We're doing it to feel momentarily better, but it's actually a really poor strategy to try to get a bunch of our needs met. Mm-hmm. So what is self-care? Like, what is it really? Let's boil it down to its essentials. And at its essentials, self-care is actually nothing more than taking a little time to meet one or more of your universal needs. I'm going to say that again. Self-care is nothing more than taking a little time to meet one or more of your universal needs. So, what self-care is not? It is not an indulgence. Self-care is not something to do when you have the time. And what I mean by that is, of course, if you have time, you want to do some self-care, that's fine. It's not something that you wait for a free moment before you do self-care.
Free moments don't exist.
Like, I was talking to someone about it literally this week. I'm like, you have to make time for the things that are important because otherwise time gets filled with, like, it's a little bit like, like time is like a suitcase. I am going somewhere with this, in that it will, whatever you have will expand to fill the space available. So it's like if you're taking a massive suitcase away, chances are you'll fill a massive suitcase. Mm-hmm. If you only have a tiny suitcase, chances are you'll only fill a tiny suitcase.
Well, and the amount of bullshit that goes into that large suitcase,
right?
It's
that you don't actually need.
Oh, I didn't need my prom dress from high school. Well, I just wanted to have it to be prepared,
just in case. I didn't need 27 pairs of underwear for 2 nights away. Maybe you do. Who knows? No judgment if you do. But like that's the thing. It's like have so much stuff in there that's not necessary, or it's not the priorities and not the important things. And the same thing is true with time. It's like it's like people say the same thing with like work will expand to fill the time available. If you only have 2 hours to get something done, chances are you'll get it done in 2 hours. If you have 6 hours, you might do the same amount of work in 6 hours, but just be less productive and really feel frustrated, or maybe do other things and get distracted amongst the time in between. So it's not something to do when you have the time, when time just magically appears and you have like, oh, look, I have spare 10 minutes. Like that doesn't tend to happen very often.
I say, if you have the formula for that,
oh yeah,
please let us know.
Absolutely. Self-care is also not something to do as a reward. If you go back to our previous episode, remember, self-worth means that you are worthy simply because you exist. Self-worth means you are worthy of having your needs met simply because you exist, which means that because self-care is meeting our needs, it is not a reward for doing something well. It is not a reward for achieving something, or killing yourself on the treadmill, or working all hours God sends for three weeks.
And you said it's not a reward for, being on the treadmill. I can only think of all of the times that I've done self-care of physical activity, like working out, and then my reward for working out was like, oh, I don't have to feel guilty about eating this pint of Ben and Jerry's.
Right. I mean,
sorry, I just counterproductive in my head, but like that's how we like.
It's the trade-offs that we make.
Reward for
and
it.
the interesting thing is the pint of Ben and Jerry's meeting your needs? Sometimes it is, in which case just let that be the thing that you're doing to meet your needs. Sometimes it isn't. Actually, there's something else that's going to meet my needs better. In which case, do the thing that's going to meet your needs better. The other thing that self-care is not a nice to have.
I mean, it is.
And it's not. No, it's not a nice to have, because it's essential. That's the thing. Is that when I remember we start talking about needs in the program, and I remember when I first started looking into needs, I went to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, because I wanted to understand what a need was. How do you define a need? And it was interesting because if you ask somebody what a need is, like they know, like you feel it, like you can understand, like in your body knows what a need is, but trying to put that into words is actually something that can be a little challenging for people. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what I normally do in these situations. I'm going to go to the dictionary. I'll see what the dictionary says. And then if I think that definition requires a little tweaking, I'll do that myself. And so to better understand what self-care is, we need to better understand what a need is. So let's look at these dictionary definitions. So there were 3 definitions that I found. The first is a situation in which someone or something must do or have something. The second is, I'm just reading these off the screen so I get it right, something a person must have, something is needed in order to live or succeed or to be happy. And the third is a strong feeling that you must have or do something. Now there is one word that is consistent in every single one of those definitions. And no, it's not the word something before you say it.
I was like, all right, what bullshit word can I pick out of here?
I knew you would be looking for one. She's going to be like, is it or?
I was going to go, but no, or, yeah, or.
A's in all of them, or's in all of them, something
is
in
it
all
or?
of them. Sorry, is it or? No, it's not. You know full well what the word is.
Is it must?
Oh my goodness, how did you guess? Yes.
It's on the screen.
So the common word, the important common word, let's say it that way, the important common word in every single one of those definitions is the word must. And that is needs are musts. Now, they might be musts for different things. So depending where on the universal needs tree we're talking, like if we're in the survival needs, in the roots of the tree, that's a must for survival. If we're on the trunk of the tree and we're talking about our intrinsic needs, our internal well-being, that's a must for our internal well-being. So they're musts for different things. The musts in the branches are for expansion. It's a must in order to have that enrichment in the leaves and the fruit of the tree. So they are musts for different things, but ultimately they are all musts. So as self-care is about meeting your universal needs, and meeting your needs is a must, self-care is also a must, which is why it's not a nice to have. I mean, It is nice that we have it, but it is not just nice to have.
That's more what I meant, but I'm glad you corrected it in that moment, because I think a lot of people,
Yeah. Oh, it's nice. Like self-care is nice to have if I can get to it. So no. Nice to have is way down the street. First and foremost, self-care is a must. Once we do our self-care, we might feel that it's nice that we've done that self-care for ourselves, but the sequence here is what's important. First and foremost, self-care is a must.
One more time.
Once again, self-care is a must. Self-care is a must. Meeting our needs a must. Self-care is simply meeting our needs.
Well, I think that one of the reasons why a lot of people think more on the nice to have type of line of thinking is because of what people think self-care actually is.
Oh, yes.
And they're thinking, bubble baths, massages, mani-pedis, vacations, things that, lighting the candle. And sometimes it can be these things. We're not saying that it can't be these things, but, when you see you're scrolling through social media, like, take a bubble bath. Like, yeah, that can be nice and relaxing. And sometimes that could be just a pain in the ass. Like, and that doesn't meet your needs.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
it actually compromises your needs because that's not what you need to be focusing on. But if you're like, nope, self-care, got to take a bubble bath. Like, it doesn't always look that way.
And some people can't stand taking baths.
Yes.
In which case, it's not meeting your needs. In which case, it's not self-care.
And some people aren't able to take baths.
Exactly.
So there has to be other ways to meet those needs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we wanted to give some examples of what self-care can look like, which people aren't always aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking water, getting rest, like rest in all of its forms, whether that's napping, just closing your eyes, taking a moment to pause. All of that is just rest your being, rest your body.
Yeah.
Rest. Mm-hmm. Taking a moment to just relax. And then the same thing, like a moment can be...
I felt my whole body go, just as you said that.
It can be a moment of a second, a moment of a couple of minutes. It could be a moment of a day. Like, today is my moment to relax.
Right, absolutely.
Eating something that nourishes us, or eating something that we want to for the wholeness aspect. We don't go into the top layers of the tree quite.
Yes, we tend to, because it's so important, because the roots and the trunk of the tree tend to be the needs that are most neglected. They're also the needs that make the biggest difference. When we're working with people in the program, we start off with the needs 1 to 7, which is the roots and the trunk of the tree. Now, wholeness sits in the leaves and the fruit of the tree, but sometimes it is important to recognize that sometimes our wholeness need is where there's a lot of stuff that sits in wholeness, and I'm not going to go into it because we will go down the rabbit hole if I do today. But one of the things that sits in there is balance. Like, we need to make sure that we're allowing all of the aspects of ourselves. And so often people think, self-care, meeting needs, must eat salad. Self-care, meeting needs, must eat smoothie. Like they think there's certain things that we think we must have, and those are the only ways that we can be doing real self-care when it comes to consuming stuff.
Self-care, chocolate means bad.
Exactly, because so often we've been conditioned to believe that. And sometimes actually our wholeness need is just like, we want a bit of balance. Yeah, generally speaking, I've eaten stuff that's going to be nourishing for my body today. Now I just want something for that balance of it. So, and again, there's a lot of nuance to this. So don't be going, I said I can eat chocolate today. So it's
because I want to.
Because it meets my needs to do so. And yes, sometimes it does. You have to understand all the other layers of the needs as well. But it is important to recognize that eating something nourishing can be meeting our needs. And sometimes eating something that isn't nourishing can also meet our needs once we understand some of the nuance underneath it.
Thank you for going a little deeper into that one. Some other examples of the self-care that we don't always identify with: saying no. Like, yes. The act of no.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Oh no.
Oh yes. You guys don't have Churchill insurance over here, do you?
No. Do you have the Kool-Aid man over there?
No.
Well, that's what I'm doing. We're both quoting different.
That's hilarious. So there's a Churchill insurance, and there's like a British bulldog that sits and he goes, oh no, like that. So like when you're like no, I'm like, and then he goes, oh yes, right at the end. So yeah.
Well, it's actually, we were talking about a cartoon, and it's where it kind of stems from, but the Kool-Aid man would burst through walls. He's like a big glass jug of Kool-Aid with like sloshy Kool-Aid in it, and he'd break through the wall during the commercial, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah." And then like there's a running joke. It's like, "Oh no."
So, yes to saying no.
Yes to saying no.
Oh.
And we are in the midst of a tropical storm. So
yay! That if you're wondering what that sound is, that would be the rain hammering down outside. So yeah, we're going to continue.
Sometimes just taking a moment
to listen to
the rain.
Or it can be taking a moment to go dance in the rain, which we have done in the backyard here in the middle of a tropical storm, which is kind of cool.
It's fun, but it also results in a drowned rat type of look, which is fine, but it's just not fun to sit in.
And it's probably not the best look for our podcast. Just saying. Like, I mean, maybe. Who knows? We may do a drowned rat podcast at sometime. But anyway, all right. Saying yes to saying no.
Saying yes to say.
Saying no is such an important way of, like, it's such a huge part of self-care. And people don't realizing it, that by saying no to the request to somebody else, we get to say yes to ourselves.
It's powerful.
We get to say yes to the things that are going to meet our needs. We get to say yes to rest. We get to say yes to taking time to put together a meal that feels nourishing and nutritional to us. We get to say yes to going and dancing in the rain because we've said no to this other thing. Like whatever it is, by saying no to other people and sometimes saying no to ourselves. Like, oh, I can just push through. I can do this next email. Just going, no, stop, rest. So saying no is a powerful way of doing self-care.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's no seems like a negative in a lot of situations. It's not.
No. No, it's not a negative. It can sometimes be one of the most constructive things you can do. And it's so powerful.
It is. Some more examples, getting some fresh air, simply going outside and taking a breath of fresh air. A single breath can make a significant change.
Well, and as you may know from watching some of our previous episodes, taking deep breaths is one of the things that actually can stimulate and tone the vagus nerve, which, as we know, is responsible for the rest and digest. It can lower our heart rate. It can reduce our cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone. So literally taking it, like, so funny because as you're going through these examples, like you said, take a moment to relax, and I was like, oh. And then you said, getting some fresh air, and I was like, taking a deep breath. It's so interesting. Like, just these little reminders as we're going through these reminders, I'm like, oh yeah, that would feel really good to do now. That would meet my needs right now. It's kind of fun.
Well, I'm going to ask you to keep your butt in the seat for the next ones because I don't need you wandering off.
Aww. No fun. We don't do anything like
if we weren't filming a podcast, you could take a short break.
I could.
I mean, you could actually take a short break right now because it could simply be, all right. Creep. She's in my head.
It's nice and cozy, warm in here. It's like every time she says, she's like, get out of my head. I'm like, no, it's snuggly, warm and cozy in here. I'm hanging out.
You can... I'm moving on. You can.
Are you taking a short break?
I'm doing something. Oh my God. You can stretch. You can stretch sitting. You can stretch standing. You can do a full-on yoga practice, or you can just put an arm out and be like, oh, that actually... Yeah, like, that felt good.
Literally, I'm like stretching my neck as you're saying this. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm loving this episode.
You could watch some Netflix or a movie. Like,
I'm off. Bye.
No. Oh, you... Come back here. Pull you by your headphone cord. A lot of times I think, I mean, I know I've been guilty of this. Like, you get into the Netflix binge and it's like, oh, I've wasted so much time. Or like, we think of all the things we could have been doing. And sometimes it's just like, that's what I need, is to just dive in and be like, I am in this show and immerse myself in it.
The thing about it is sometimes what it does, it gives our brains a break.
That too.
It gives us a moment to step out of the things that we're worrying on, or the things that we've got to do, or the things. And so sometimes it can meet our needs to do this. And so often we, as Serena says, we guilt ourselves doing this. Like, no, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, and actually sometimes it does meet our needs. And this is why understanding what the needs are and the ways of meeting our needs that are going to be green ways. Because this is the thing, is that people are like, oh yeah, Netflix, that's a red spectrum way of meeting needs, right? And I'm like, well, it depends what need. Depends what situation situation, because Netflix in some occasions can be a green spectrum way of meeting needs. And even binging on Netflix can sometimes be a green spectrum way of meeting needs. It isn't as simple as people think it is. And so this is the reason it helps to be like, oh, this is what this need is. This is what this need is. This meets this need in this way. Oh, actually, no, that doesn't that's not really meeting my need. I had a couple of instances this week where very much like social media, I was like, no, this is not meeting my needs. Putting the phone down, going to do something else. And it's interesting because there are times when it does meet my needs, because I'm looking to connect with people who maybe I'm not close to, because I'm in the US right now and I've got a lot of people I love who are in Europe, for example. Wow, that rain is coming down today. Actually, it's really funny because one of the things that used to meet my needs a lot, I used to listen to the sound, tracks, which was like the sound of rainfall, like thunderstorms or things that were. Sorry, I've just realised that somebody's out back right now.
Yeah, I saw it.
I was like, oh, hello. Somebody in the backyard. It's okay. They're allowed to be there. It's not like I've got some strangers just walking around in the backyard right now. I think they're actually collecting mangoes because we have the mango tree out back and it's dropping a lot of fruit, especially when the rain comes down like this. So anyway.
I also want to mention, it's kind of tagging on to the Netflix and the movie. It also allows you to be in creator. And I've done this actually before I even met Claire, but never really realized what I was doing. I tend to put on cartoons a lot now because it allows me to, tune out sometimes, and it's just good background noise. But a lot of times it's to help create what I want. I want to, I might be in kind of a funky mood. And it's like, actually, I want some laughter. I want some joy. Yes. I want some of this. So I put something on, and it helps me to help cultivate that feeling within myself, because it's hard to switch if you're in a shit mood, right, to be that's how it would come out. So to
it's a tool that you can use for that. It's funny actually, because I've done with the yogic practice that I do, there's one of the practices that they do a little bit of laughter yoga, and it's funny because you're in the middle of it, and it wasn't something I realized because I pay to do yoga with somebody who has the lineage, doing whatever I can to decolonize my practice as much as I can, and I didn't realize that was a part of that tradition. And so but it's funny because you're in the middle of your yoga practice, which is normally very peaceful and very serene and very calm and what have you, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, okay, just start laughing. And the funny thing is that he then starts laughing, and I find myself laughing at the fact that, and initially it does feel a little bit forced, but before you know it, you're actually laughing genuinely, and it's like, how did I get here? I don't care. This works. It's fun, and it's meeting my needs.
I'd be afraid that I'd get into a giggle fit. I get into these giggle fits where I start crying. I can't breathe, and it goes from funny to worrisome pretty quickly.
Get the oxygen.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
With the rain falling, it actually seems quite appropriate. Yep. Another way for self-care is showering. This is another one. Sometimes I feel like showering is the most cumbersome thing in the world, and I'm like, I just can't. I can't even be bothered to do it. And sometimes it is the most cleansing on many levels and relaxing and just caring thing I can do for myself to just wash away everything.
It's interesting actually, because I saw a post the other day, and I've seen this post several times. I actually think I need to do a new version of it, because I've seen it several times, and every time I've seen it I'm like, yes. And there's a post about tips for dealing with depression, and there's a whole load of them. There's there's a bunch of different ones. One's like shower versus bath, reach out to a friend. There's a lot of different ones in there, and that's one of the reasons that I feel like I want to redo it, because I can see that and I'm like, yeah. And sometimes just doing one of those things can feel overwhelming. Trying to make a decision about any of those things could feel overwhelming from that space. So it's like, you don't have to do all of these things. Just pick one of them that feels doable, that you've got the capacity for where you're at, and start there. And one of the things that I think it said in that post was, for example, showering. They say shower rather than a bath, because it helps to kind of move the energy through. It feels clearing and cleansing, as opposed to a bath kind of just sitting in it. It's supposed to be better for depression. But one of the things they said is that you don't even need to clean yourself. Like you can just stand in the shower. If that's all you've got the capacity for and just feel the water moving over you, that's enough. So it's like, again, depending on the circumstances, like sometimes I take a shower because I'm like, I got to get this energy of the day off me, and I want to wash my hair, and I want to wash my entire body. I want to get it off, have it all drip and disappear down the drain. That meets my needs. And then somebody else who maybe is experiencing depression, actually all that meets their needs is just to get in the shower and stand under it. Both valid, both self-care, depending on the situation. Both work, exactly, depending on the circumstances. Yeah.
Connecting with a friend. Just simply connecting. Like, and it doesn't have to, this is something that I struggled with when I first started doing the work, is I have to be all in or I'm out. And I'm still working on that. But connecting with a friend, I needed to put aside the time to really connect with them in the way that I wanted to. And what would happen is, something would come up or there wouldn't be enough time, and I didn't feel like it was going to be as good of a connection as it needed to be, so I wouldn't connect, and then it would go further along and I'd feel...
So you feel like you need more time to connect even better because of all the time that's passed. I have a friend who's, obviously I have a friend who's like this. I have another friend who's like this. Who's like, I really want to like really connect, and so I don't have the time. So I don't message, and then before I know it, it's been 3 months, and then I feel like I need even more time, which I still don't have. So I still don't connect. So then it's 6 months, and then it's 12 months, and it's like I'm like, just send an emoji.
Then that's the power of just an emoji, or hey, it's been really busy, I'm thinking of you, just want to send you some love. Like, you can connect, and if they come back and they, you don't have the time or the capacity, you can be like, I really do want to connect when, I'm in a better space or have the time or whatever it is. I just wanted you to know you're on my mind. Right. And that in itself would feel like, when that met my needs and I do that, it's like, oh, okay. It wasn't necessarily like I'd love to have these long, in-depth conversations and really connect, but just knowing that they know they're on my mind.
Right.
Met that need for me.
Right.
Spending time with pets and animals. I mean, you'd hear about Larry. I also have 2 sugar gliders.
Who's Larry? Who's Larry?
Well, I was going to say, I have 2 other pets.
Yeah.
I have my little Nugget and Ren. So I do have 2 sugar gliders, but Larry is...
They're super cute.
They're super cute, but Larry's so fucking cool.
Yeah. True story.
And it wasn't really until Larry came into my life that I realized how connecting with him met my needs, and how just like hugging your animal, or being in their presence, being in presence with animals outside in nature, like that's self-care. One that resonates with a lot of people and was the first self-care thing that really clicked with me, and I was like,
this was a mind-blown moment for Serena, and when you find out what it is, I mean, you're going to be like, what?
Yes. I want you to take that feeling and then apply it to yourself and tell me that you don't do this, because this is the one thing beyond anything that we teach or we put out there. I comment on this most with people, like just random of people, and it's going pee when you first need to.
Not sitting cross-legged, not waiting till you finish the email, not waiting until the break. Going when you first need to go. And it's amazing how many people who, like, we've had this conversation with, and we're like, we might just have a casual conversation about it, like, because it comes up in context, and then people were like, look at me, I'm going to the toilet because I first need it. And it's like, yeah, you are, good for you. Like, it's like, but people are so proud of themselves because it's like something like, oh my god, I do that.
Yeah. And I don't have to. Right. You mean I don't have to hold it, I don't have to, like, your body isn't meant to hold that in. Like, it's
meant to get rid of it.
Yeah, like, do it.
As soon as possible.
And, sometimes we need to be held accountable for it. Like, there are times where, Claire's giving me the nudge. She's like, you said you had to go pee because I'd get distracted, or vice versa. And it's like, no, remember, go pee. Just go pee, and then it's done. Then you've peed, and then you can move on, and you're not thinking about, I have to pee. You're not...
like typing emails going, oh my God, I've got... And then that, quite often that's what ends up happening with a lot of these needs, is that you wait until the last possible critical moment. Like, I literally have to go now because I'm going to explode if I don't. Same thing with drinking water. How many people wait until they're gasping and thirsty? I mean, you'll notice if you're watching on the video, you will see me constantly as we are recording. I'm constantly drinking water because I've learned about proactively hydrating myself, not waiting till I'm gasping to have something. Same thing with food. How many people wait until like, oh my God, I'm absolutely ravenous now. Now I'm like, and it's like, and then we want something quick, we want something simple, and we don't necessarily make the best food choices in that situation. We eat more than we actually need because we feel so hungry. We're trying to fill that void.
It compounds and it can actually uproot your other needs.
Yeah.
Like I know just holding pee. It just sounds weird to say that. I'm like, how can I put this eloquently? We're talking about
we
pee.
can't.
Yeah.
We're talking about pee. It's all good.
When you need to take a whiz.
Yeah.
Where the fuck was I going with that?
Compounding.
Compounding. Yeah, like my body will start to tense up. So then it's affecting me physically. And then I'll start getting anxious. And it's like, well, I need to get this done quick and I need to go pee. So then I start whirling and it's like, if I would just get up, right? Yeah, they're all like red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. All of a sudden I have a scarf and I've pissed my pants because I'm holding it. Like...
You have a scarf
made out of all the red flags.
Oh, I had lights going on in my. I was on lights over here, but I mean I have a visual of you. I know,
wrapping the scarf around my neck and sashaying off to the bathroom.
But it was like, yeah, right.
That hasn't happened. Just so I'm gonna put that out there, like, or at least not in recent memory, where I can be like, yes, I've held it that long, but I mean it's come pretty damn near close. Or it's like, oh, like you pull down your pants and it's like, oh, I'm going, I hope I'm over the toilet.
God, oh, I love you so much. This is podcast gold right here today, ladies and gentlemen.
I didn't know,
and not even all non-binary folks and those who don't identify as either.
Well, and the thing is, like, this really just goes to show like how the knowing of my innate self-worth, because even a year ago, I wouldn't have imagined talking, like, I would have been so concerned, what are people going to think of me? They're going to think I'm weird. They're going to think I'm gross. You think whatever you want about me. Like, go for it.
And because we've been in these situations, like, we're sharing this because this is our experience. And it's the experience of so many people we've worked with, so many people we know. And it's like, yeah, this is not an unusual situation.
All those mamas that have had the pressure of a baby sitting on their bladder and it never went back to how it was prior to.
Right.
Go pee.
Right.
Go
mamas
pee.
And other people maybe who have been pregnant.
Yes. Or, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I think of all the times I'm like, just go, and they're like, no, we finished this, and it's like, and I say, this is a fundamental of self-care, like, go pee, and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So I know you got some other examples.
Yeah, I do have some now that
we got stuck on the pee for a bit, but now we're back.
You know. Fun topic to talk about. But we're coming back with one of my other favorite ones. You know, I love boundaries. Putting up
we got more today. Normally we get 3. Normally it's boundaries with you. Well, we got extra today.
I am super jazzed about boundaries. Putting up a boundary is it's powerful, and it's change. Like, it can change everything. You can put up boundaries with yourself.
Right.
You can put up boundaries with somebody else. For me, it was time boundaries. Like, I have to set hard stops for things because I'd get too into something and it wouldn't be coming from a negative place. We'd be working and it's like, I need to get home by this time so I can make dinner and, have the rest of my
time that I need to meet my other needs.
Right. And we'd get so into it, all of a sudden it'd be like 9:00 and it's like, oh, well, that idea went to shit. And so now it's like, all right, I have a hard stop today.
Well, it's interesting because when we first started hanging out, you'd never heard of a hard stop before.
Yeah, no.
Like, you didn't know what a hard stop was.
Yeah, she'd be like, oh, I have a hard stop. I'm like,
what's like, one of those?
That's when I'm done. And I'm like, oh, you can do that? You can tell me that you're going to be done.
And it's okay. And this is the thing, is that some boundaries are negotiable and flexible and may change. Some are hard stops. Some are hard boundaries of like, actually, no, this is this one can't move. So this is what we're, and it was, I remember like, that was one where like, when you got that, you're like, oh my, like, holy shit. Like, this is incredible. I didn't know I could do this. And I think the interesting thing is the reason the hard boundary resonated so much with you was because it was something you needed for yourself. Mm-hmm. It was a way of setting a boundary with yourself that was going to be a non-negotiable, that you knew you weren't going to compromise on, more so than it was setting a boundary with other people. I mean, it's a good communication tool with other people, so people know, oh, this is a hard, but like this one's not shifting. But I think it was as much for you as it was for anyone else.
Oh, absolutely. And what it also did is it gave realistic expectations right up front, because I start out my interaction being like, I have a hard stop at this time. So whoever I'm with knows that that is the hard stop. It doesn't pop up 5 minutes before, oh, sorry, got to stop. Yeah. We can plan around it.
Or you hit that hard boundary and you're like, oh, gotta go. And they're like, wait, what? Like, we're in the middle of something. Like, that communication tool is really helpful. And in actual fact, we were talking earlier about the power of saying no. Interesting. Saying no is setting a boundary.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons it's so important, so powerful. And the reason we put it in there as a separate one is because often people don't realize that saying no is setting a boundary. Like, you can be like, I'm going to set a boundary. I'm going to set a time boundary. I'm going to set a space boundary. Of like, actually, I'm not, like, if, for example, you may have an autoimmune condition right now, and because COVID is still going on at the moment, you may have a physical boundary of, actually, I'm not going to hug people. That's a physical boundary. You can have or a space boundary. You can have a time boundary. You can have a capacity boundary of like, actually, I've hit my emotional capacity now. I need to tap out for today. And saying no is another form of boundary. Boundaries are simple. We use Brené Brown's definition of boundaries. Boundary is simply simply the difference between what's okay and what's not okay. It's letting people know what's not okay, it's letting yourself know what's not okay. And so setting that boundary, whether it's a time boundary, whether it's saying no, whether it's all these things, this is one of the best ways that you can engage with self-care, because sometimes, as Serena said, actually you need to set these boundaries with yourself. I need to set a hard stop at this time so that I can make sure I get a nourishing dinner, and I can make sure I can get to bed at a time that is going to support me and my other needs. Or actually, I'm going to set a boundary with this where I'm not going to work this morning because I need to do the other things that are self-care. I've been doing that recently. Like, actually, first thing, I need to make sure I'm doing my needs practice. I'm practicing yoga. I hadn't been practicing yoga for a while because I had some physical stuff going on. And it's like, no, that's really important to me. So I'm going to set a boundary in that I'm not going to work until I've done some kind of movement in the morning. It might be a couple of stretches. It might be our massage therapist has an incredible massage tool that we use. Like, I might do a little bit of rolling out on my little massage tool, whatever it is. Making sure that you set boundaries is your way of cultivating space and time in which you can often meet other needs.
I love boundaries.
Boundaries are amazing.
They really are.
Amazing.
It game changing. There's so many game changing things.
We change a lot of games on this podcast.
But don't play any of them.
Right.
Something that Clary brought up a little bit earlier that I want to kind of come back to is also social media. Social media as a means of self-care. And there are two aspects to that. The first is engaging with it. Sometimes it meets our needs to engage with social media, engage in that connection in the community, in whatever it is. Sometimes it's just nice to scroll through and see pictures, and maybe that's what you need, is just a visual simulation.
Or you're looking for some inspiration, or you want to laugh or whatever, yeah.
Right. The other way that it can be utilized for self-care is switching off from it. Some of you who may follow us on Facebook and are in our women's group may have noticed for a couple of months I wasn't on social media pretty much at all. I had to dip out because that's what met my needs. And that was okay. I mean, in a business situation, I communicated with my partner. I was like, this is where I'm at. This is what I have to do. We made sure it worked in a way that, served us as both as much as it could, with my need to step back from the social media aspect. But now I'm back on, and I was able to kind of curate what I wanted to see on my page and come back to it in a way that served me, didn't deplete me, and that actually met my needs. And there were some days where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, No, not today.
And that switching off from social media is setting a boundary.
Look at that. Told you I love boundaries. Yeah. A lot of people really struggle with self-care, and that's, one of the most important things we're trying to get across. They feel guilty for doing it. They feel selfish for doing it. And in short, they don't feel worthy of it. They don't feel worthy of self-care. And a lot of people struggle to make time to prioritize, to meet their universal needs because they need to be because the need to be connected to their self-worth is chronically unmet. Mm-hmm. So if it's chronically unmet, you're not cultivating that kind of repetition that in the consistency.
Yeah.
That's the word.
There we go.
That's needed to really make it a fulfilling practice. So if you do get a little strike to the confidence or the internal self-worth, like Claire says with the Star Trek shields, you're not as impacted and you can refill and resource yourself quicker. Right. So if you don't feel worthy of having your needs met, you're less likely to meet them. So we want to change that script.
Right, absolutely. And this is where we get to really the crux of what we're talking about today, which is this link between self-care and self-worth. And there is this symbiotic relationship between your self-worth and your tendency to do self-care. And it can move in two directions. So the direction it tends to move for a lot of people right now is in a downward spiral. And what that means is that the lower your sense of self-worth, which tends to be quite low for a lot of people, is that I have not met, in the time I've been doing this work, I have not yet met anybody who has a consistently nourished and supported sense of self-worth. I've been doing this for quite some time now, just saying. So what tends to happen is that the lower your sense of self-worth, the less likely you are to do self-care, because the less worthy of self-care you're going to feel. And the less self-care you do, the less worthy you feel of self-care, because you're not getting self-care. So the lower your self-worth gets, and the lower your self-worth gets, the less likely you are to do self-care, and the less likely to do self-care, the lower your self-worth gets, and onwards and onwards. And it's this kind of downward spiral. Now, the cool thing is, and the incredible thing about this that I didn't realize until a few years ago when this first kind of came to light, is that symbiotic relationship works in the other direction too. Which means that even if you don't feel worthy of self-care, if you do a little self-care, you don't have to do loads, you can just do a little bit, you are demonstrating that you are worthy of it because you are giving it to yourself. So the self-worth is going to, it's going to hit the pop shield apparently. The self-worth is going to improve a little bit. And the more your self-worth improves, the more your inclination to do self-care is going to be. And you're probably going to do a little bit more self-care. And the little bit more of self-care you do, the little bit more your self-worth improves. And again, upward, and there's this kind of upward spiral, because the more you do self-care, the more worthy you're going to feel of self-care. The more worthy you're feeling of self-care, the more you're going to do self-care. The more you do self-care, the more worthy you're going to feel, and up and up and up. It's going to go in the other direction, in this upward spiral. And what this means is that you don't need to start off by feeling worthy of taking care of your needs. By taking care of your needs, you will actually start to increase your sense of worthiness of having them met. So you can start with the thing you can actually do something about, because a lot of people are waiting around going, well, once I feel worthy of taking care of myself, I'm going to do it.
It's like time. It doesn't just appear.
Oh, I thought you meant like the suitcase analogy that we did in a previous podcast episode. I'm like, okay, say more. Tell me more about this. Yes, you're absolutely right. Time doesn't just appear, and self-worth doesn't just appear. And a lot of the time we're focusing on the feeling, like, we need to feel self-worth, that we have to start with feeling self-worth. Actually, this is something we can do which will cultivate more of a sense of self-worth, which is the thing that is incredible.
I actually had an experience with this when I first started doing my needs practice, ironically. When you go through the program, you learn the process and you learn the practice and you find a way of doing it that works for you. And it was that initial, like, literally takes, I don't even think it takes 5 minutes most mornings for me. But at the beginning, it was like, I have to sit down. I have to do it. It was
I have to do the practice. I think the practice is a little bit like the first. I don't know whether anyone listening, whether you, the person who's listening to us right now, has ever learned to drive a stick shift car, which is that when you first start learning to drive a stick shift, you have to really focus on it. It's like, okay, so I'm on the gas, I'm off the gas, I'm on the clutch, I shift the gear, I'm off the clutch, I'm on the gas. Interestingly enough, I mainly drive a stick shift. I've been driving stick shift for the majority of my life. In fact, since I first learned with a stick shift, and most of my cars have been stick shift cars, I still have to think about that process when I'm trying to break it down, because now I do it automatically. But here's the thing. Initially, it takes some time and focus because we're not used to doing it. It's like, oh, what's the sequence? This, then that, then that, then that, then this. And the more we do that, the more we actually get into the habit of it, and the more we build that routine and that practice up. Until now, I drive a stick shift car. I never think about changing gear. I never think about the process at all, because I've moved from having to think about it, what they call well, depending which, unconscious competence. There are 4 levels of learning. There is unconscious incompetence, which is that we don't know what we don't know. There's conscious incompetence, which is we know we don't know something. There's conscious competence, which is I know how to do this, but I have to think about it in order to be able to do it. And then the final step is unconscious competence, which is where we don't have to think about it anymore, but we're still able to do it. And once you get into a practice of doing something, that's when you build that unconscious competence. And that's what we're going to get to. And sometimes when we get out of the habit of doing something, maybe we haven't driven a stick shift for 10 years. Sometimes we go back to conscious competence. We have to think about it again, or we realize we've forgotten how to do it. So we're conscious of the fact that we're incompetent again. So then we might move into, okay, I've got to think about it, figure out how to do it again, and then we go back into it. And sometimes that can be true with the needs practice as well. Like we get to the point where we don't think about it. Like initially, it takes a little bit of time to figure it out and be like, okay. And then we get to the point where it takes less than 5 minutes of a morning just to do our practice. And then sometimes we may have periods of time where we fall out of the practice and we go, oh, hold on, I haven't been doing this again. I need to put some time and effort and focus back into do it again to get back into that unconscious competence again.
Well, speaking in the practice, because the more I met my needs, the more worthy I felt of having them met. Mm-hmm. And then the more excited I got about meeting my needs, and the more I wanted to meet my needs. So the more I did my practice, and the more I met my needs. So the more worth that I felt of having them. So the more, because I was meeting my needs, the more I was feeling more worth of having them met.
More worthy of having them met. Yeah, absolutely.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
So, the more I did, the easier it got, the easier it became to do. It became a regular thing. It became natural, and it just became something that, I mean, the apprehension and the heaviness of, I have to do the practice was like, I'm doing my practice like I brush my teeth, like I'd wake up in the morning. And the really interesting thing is I actually saw it have an effect on Claire, wanting to meet her needs more, because she saw me doing the practice. And when I started the practice, I think you were doing it mentally I don't believe you were.
I wasn't doing it as consistently. I wasn't doing it every day. I think I was probably doing it like every other day or something like that. But I think that there's a piece that's missing from how you're kind of relaying this, in a sense that you're sharing what happened, but you're really not sharing the energy that was present, because that was the thing that got me, was like Serena was a little hesitant probably to do the practice, because the practice felt like work, even though we come at it from a point of view of making sure it doesn't feel like work. But sometimes that can be a bit of a thing to unlearn.
Well, and it was a mental thing. It's like, one more thing.
Yes.
It could, I mean, if she had handed me an ice cream cone, would that have been one more thing? Probably not, but really it was the same.
Yes.
I mean,
it was one more thing to do.
Yeah.
And I remember when that first like week or so that you started doing the practice, there was that like effervescent excitement of like, and you would relay it to me. It's like, I do my practice in the morning, and it made me realize there were all these things that I was doing. And as I'm going throughout the day, I'm getting bonus, and I'm getting on my needs met. And then by the time I get to the end of the day, I've done all my needs, and I've done a bunch of bonuses. I've got a bunch of ding-dings, and I'm like, holy crap! I forgot how great this thing is when we connect to that part of it.
I forget how great this thing is that I created.
I know, it's true. Like, but when you get into the habit, into that practice of it, sometimes it's that conscious confidence. Like, oh, hold on a second. I need to remind myself why I'm doing this. And I got excited. I'm like, I want to do more to meet my needs too. Like, because I was doing the practice, but I wasn't really connecting with all the bonuses and all the other things that I was doing throughout the day at that point in time because I had a lot going on. But watching Serena go through that and watching that excitement in her and how much energy it was giving her.
Well, because it all felt good. I mean, that's the whole point. It all felt, it all met my all met my needs. I was going to say it all felt good, but sometimes what met my needs was dropping into what didn't feel good to really process it. But on the other side of it, it always felt good on the other side because it was either releasing, it was processing, it was meeting the needs that were present.
And what was really great was it felt easeful.
Yes.
Like the energy around it for you, it wasn't like, oh God, this is hard work, this is something I need to do. It was like, oh my God, this is so easy to me. I went, oh my God, I've got so much energy. Oh my goodness, I'm like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I want to do more of this too. Like,
it was the arrow effect. Like I was hesitant getting pulled back. I'm like, I got to do it. And once I got shot off, it was like just the pure energetic propulsion. Whatever.
Yeah.
Forward
motion.
I was gonna say moving forward. It was natural. It wasn't something that I had to create for myself anymore, even though I was in creator creating it for myself. It was really, I mean, even just talking about it, it's cool
and it
to
was,
think about.
What happened was that you started and the doing of the practice gave you more energy, which gave you, like, it built the momentum. The momentum like picked up and picked up and picked up because it was like, hold on, I'm doing this thing. Oh, I feel good. Oh, I feel good. I want to do more of this thing. I'm doing more of this thing. I'm feeling good. Like I've got more energy. I've got more. Oh my goodness, this is what it feels like to have your needs met. Oh my goodness, like I've never experienced this before ever. And I was like, and I'm like, I want to do more of it too now as well. Like I was already doing some of it, but it inspired me seeing you so excited about it and seeing how easeful it was and just the huge effect it had on your energy, your mood, your mental health, your physical health, everything.
Mean, even my she hates it when I call her my boss because she is a good leader.
Not me, the other one.
The other one. She noticed it.
I also hate it when she calls me her boss, but she never calls me her boss because we're partners. So.
Yeah. But she was like, she's kind of like leaning in. You know, she knew I was going through the program and everything, but it was like, all right, something's different because I was showing up differently. Yeah. I was doing my work better. I mean, everything was just improved.
Yeah.
And everybody was seeing it. It was like, what are you doing?
Tell me more. Even I'm like, tell me more about what you're doing.
Right.
Oh, you're doing that thing I taught you. Cool. I'll do that too. Like I'll do more of that too. And that's the thing is it built and it built and it built and it built. And the interesting thing is, it was the same for me. When I first started doing my practice, I'm like, oh my goodness, this feels incredible. There was a period of time when I wasn't making time for my self-care. I was waiting for time for my self-care. The reason I wasn't making time for my self-care was because my self-worth hadn't been cultivated. I'd not actually taken the time to nourish that need relating to my self-worth. And as soon as I did, oh my goodness, I naturally wanted to do more self-care. So the more I recognized I was worthy of having my needs met, the more self-care I wanted to do, the more self-care I did, the better I felt, the more worthy I felt, the more I wanted to, I mean, it was just that ping, 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 ping. And like that upward spiral was incredible to experience the shift between where I was and where I got to and how easily I could move between those two positions.
I was waiting for you to ask if there was anything else before we closed up because I have something and I was about to jump the gun on it.
Stop. So I think that's probably all we have time for today. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish up?
Actually, I would.
Wow, cool. Share.
Now I'm so far ahead of it. I'm like, I got it. I got something new. I had mentioned a little bit earlier that I would circle back to it, so I wanted to make sure I came through on that, which is what we look at as self-care, things like bubble baths, massages, and thinking that they are a pampering, that they're not necessary. And it's not necessary in all circumstances. And I realize, like I said before, there's a lot of privilege in the fact that I'm able to go to get massages.
Or if that we have a bathtub, some people don't. Or
exactly.
Actually, I don't. Neither of us do right now. But if you have a bathtub, there's a certain privilege in that. If you're having time to have a bath, that may be a privilege in and of itself.
But like a massage, I can give myself a massage. I have the ability to be able to utilize a tool to have the need met, not by myself, and it does it in a more fulfilling manner for me. But when I finally made that switch, like, this isn't something I'm doing just to be nice or because I like massages. It's like, this is physically supporting my body.
Right.
A bath may just be a relaxing moment. It may be a soak to help physically release muscles. Like,
but it's like, I, for example, like right now, do I need a bubble bath? No. Nope. When I have been in the UK in freezing temperatures, and there's a reason I spend so much time in Key West, because I'm not built for the UK weather. It's good. I hate to say it. It's true. I'm not built for the UK weather. I freeze under circumstances that everyone else is like, are you cold? I'm like, yeah, I'm freezing. I'm like shivering my little butt off. In those situations, sometimes I need a bath. Like physically, I need a bath because it's the only thing. Like you can turn the heat up in the house if I've got cold enough. Like I can have like layers upon hoodies, upon socks, like all the things. I can even have a hot water bottle on me and it's not going to make a difference. Like getting in the bath and submerging myself in warm water is the only thing that really makes a difference to that internal temperature. Sometimes I need a bath because it's one of the ways that I get my magnesium. Like having an Epsom salts bath is one of the most effective ways to absorb magnesium is through the skin. So sometimes I need it because it's giving me my body what it needs. Sometimes I might need it because, as Serena said, like my muscles are a little sore, a little tight. And actually in those moments, that's something I need to give it the support and the release that it needs. Different circumstances, same person, different times. Sometimes it's a need, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's an indulgence. Sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, I just want to soak in a tub with a glass of wine and some bubbles and some candles and some music. And yes, that meets my needs, but actually that's not meeting my needs. That's a desire because my needs are already met. I've met the base level needs. Now it's just something that I'm enjoying on top of that. And that same thing can be all of those different things and probably a million other ones as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was, I said my piece.
I was like, oh my, I got an example of this.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, you know what, I am going to say something because it's present. And this one's a little bit of a step aside. Massages, the bubble baths with like muscle tension and whatnot. It even feels weird to say this, but for me, sometimes getting my hair cut meets my needs, and it's not from a vanity standpoint necessarily. I'll get to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't like the way it looks, but I'll start getting anxious about it because every time I look in the mirror for myself, I'm like, oh, I don't really like that. And it's like, I'll be like, well, do I deserve a haircut? Can I afford a haircut? Then I go through all the things, and sometimes it's like, I'd like to not get up every morning and look in the mirror thinking I need to get a haircut. If I just get it cut or cut it myself, there goes that.
And sometimes that can be like a sensory thing, like physically sensory. Yes, like I can't cope with it because it's affecting me from a sensory standpoint.
Well, and I tend to stim with my hair, right? And when it doesn't feel right, then that affects the stimulation, and then it adds another layer of anxiety. And
wow,
rain.
We are in tropical storm mode today. That rain is coming down.
Can't wait to burn that hurricane flag in September.
Done.
We have a on the island. We have a flag that gets raised at the beginning of hurricane season, and then we have a burning of the flag at the end of hurricane season. So
I didn't actually know that. I'm kind of curious. Like environmentally, is that really a good idea? Well, we'll find out. Like I'm not sure where that stands. It doesn't sound like it would be the most environmental. There may be better ways of getting rid of it. Just something that popped into my head. Doesn't mean any.
And on that note, do you have anything to add to today's episode?
No, I think the only thing I want to leave you with today is to recognize that a lot of the time self-worth, we feel a little bit powerless to do something about it. Like, how do we cultivate that? How do we connect to that? And the good thing with this is that this gives us an actual path of something we can do that is actually going to meet that need, which demonstrates that we are worthy of having our needs met, which actually is going to cultivate that for us. And that was one of the most powerful things for me. And I think that's really want to leave it today. So if you don't have anything else,
I'm good.
That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and remember to come back for our next episode, which will be the final episode in our little self-worth series. We'll be sharing even more about this. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. We're sending you lots of love, and remember, between now and next time, to remember to keep taking care of your needs. Lots of love.
Bye, friends.
Bye. That's it for today.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review,
as it will help more people find us. And remember, you don't need to feel worthy to do self-care. And just maybe, by doing some self-care, you might just start feeling more worthy.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.